We were existing in this silent place of hurt. My wife is my number one, my best friend. We lived together, we worked together, we played together. Everything was us, and it was great. But we then shortly found out that my wife was going to have some pretty substantial difficulties getting pregnant. And, being young, guy, newly husband, you're like, hey, it's all good. We're just having fun. Year 1 passes, and year 2 passes, 3, 4, and real pain starts to set in. You start going through some things as a couple that you just didn't foresee. And as a husband, walking through infertility is much different than my wife's journey or any other woman's journey. A husband's journey is always going to be different because he's looking at it from the outside. Most of the materials for infertility are all for women anyway. And then most guys never really talk about it because that's just not how we get down. But I was lost. And I can remember praying for years for my wife. And the way that I was praying for her, I remember praying for her at night, every night. She would go to sleep and I would lay my hands on her and I would just pray. And I was begging the Lord during these nights for help. And I remember my wife, we were having a conversation one time, and she said something that I'll never forget. She says, Tyrone, I don't know why I'm here or why do I exist if I cannot bear children? What's my purpose? And I was stunned. I remember holding her, and while I was holding her, I was just praying for my wife, for me. Lord, please teach me how to love you through real pain, real traumatic pain that will always be with you. It doesn't go away. It's not a headache. It's not a bruise. It's not a broken bone. It doesn't heal. And we were trying everything like any normal couple would. You go to the doctor, and I'll never forget, some doctor told us, I'm going to get you pregnant. And we were so excited. We just fired up. And I remember going to the doctor's office every week, they were poking my wife, and they were doing all these tests, some very painful. And we were both crying through this process. And it was a few months into it, the same doctor that had all this hope and joy, I'm going to get you pregnant. And she comes into the room 6 months later and she says, it's not working, I'm sorry. And I remember thinking it was basically like she was just ushering us out the door because we were broken. And it was something else that reinforced the brokenness of my wife. And we cried and cried. And for me, it was either fix us mentally, heal my wife, something's got to give, God. And 9 years into our infertility journey, 9 years, life was really going well. Work was going great, and we just saw God doing miracles through us and in our ministry all the time. But there was always this area. We were existing in this silent place of hurt. And we began to pray about what it would look like to adopt. And during the process of getting licensed to be a foster parent, the person we were working with, he said something that was absolutely spot on. He says, Tyrone, in this process, in this system, many people go through, they'll take on a child and then they could lose that child. That child could go back to a biological family member, something like that. But I need to let you know that if God has ordained this child to be yours from the beginning of time, there is nothing you or I or any person can do to stop that. And on the other side, if God has ordained for that child to be in your home for 2 months, there is nothing you or I or anybody can do to extend it a moment longer than God's already planned. And you hear that and you're thinking, oh no, that's too hard. It's too much. And we said, okay, Lord, we're just going to trust you. Lord, we're going to trust you. And by 3:30, the phone rings, and it's the state, and they said, hey, a baby girl has been born. Do you want her? So in a matter of hours, we go from no parents to your daughter's been born. Do you want to pick her up from the hospital? And we're just, we can't even speak. We're speechless. And we get off the phone and we're just doing a happy, scared kind of dance. And we show up at the hospital. And of course, you come unglued. And the nurse says, birth mother came in the middle of the night and she went through these names and landed on Patricia Elizabeth Brown. And this is important for me to say this, because I go back to what the person told me about God's plan. My mother's maiden name is Patricia Brown. Elizabeth was the derivative of the name that Andrea wanted to give our daughter. And we knew at that moment, God said, this is your child. Don't worry. Don't fret. This is the child that I have for you. And it's been a joy. I've got an amazing daughter, and since she was two and could talk, she's been praying over her mommy's belly year after year, at least twice a week. Lord, please heal mommy's belly. And over the years, that was one of the things that scared Andrea and I. And we would pray and ask God, please don't let this be the prayer that destroys her faith. Because we've been praying for years. But Isabel, that faith of a child. And that Monday, Andrea comes out the back room and she's got tears in her eyes. And she's holding this stick. And she says, it says I'm pregnant. And I remember thanking God on my knees. I said, Lord, you answered our prayers. And more importantly, you answered our daughter's prayers. Lord, once again, you have showed up and you've done the impossible. You've stepped in, and what doctors said wasn't going to happen. What we thought wasn't going to happen. And just so God can get 100% of the glory. Like all of it. There was no doctor that could say, see what we did? It was God saying, no, you didn't even take a Tylenol. I did this. I opened the womb. I gave you a child. And once again, we get to just say, yay, God.